Over on Jaguar Gatorade, a new college football video is out. In this one, we talk about the 1988 Sun Bowl between Alabama and Army, and how a disastrous TV decision to play the game alongside an NFL playoff game resulted in horrible ratings. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch. And now, on with our feature presentation. I want you to imagine this scenario. To start off the 2022 offseason, the Jacksonville Jaguars were looking for a head coach. The less said about that clown show of a search and how ridiculously drawn out it was, the better. Anyways, imagine if during this search, the Pittsburgh Steelers put out a statement saying, Mike Tomlin isn't going anywhere. We're not going to let him become the head coach of the Jaguars. We love Tomlin here in Pittsburgh, and we're committed to many more years of successful football under him. That would seem like kind of an odd statement to make, especially considering the fact that the Jaguars never contacted the Steelers about Tomlin's availability. No one was linking Tomlin to the Jaguars, and it seemed to come completely out of left field. Like obviously, Tomlin isn't going to the Jaguars. You just made that scenario up. You basically said, the Jaguars have not contacted us about getting Mike Tomlin to be their coach, but in the bizarre hypothetical where they did, we wouldn't accept. It makes you seem somewhat paranoid and delusional. Well, as crazy and as ridiculous as this hypothetical situation might seem, in 2007, that's exactly what happened with the Tennessee Titans, when they made it very adamant to the Dallas Cowboys that they could not have Jeff Fisher, and could not bring him on as their next head coach, even though the Titans kind of completely made up the whole rumor in the first place. It was almost like they took a page out of the playbook of some media publications where they create a completely fake story to spark outrage and controversy in order to get attention. And more than 15 years later, I still have no idea what the heck the Titans were doing with this. Because this is the story behind the craziest saga of Jeff Fisher's coaching career. Before I talk about the bizarre controversy in question, we need some context to understand how Jeff Fisher's time with the Titans was going, as well as the vacancy that was opening up that Fisher was supposedly interested in. Our story begins all the way back in 1994, when the Houston Oilers, after a disastrous 1-9 start where they had the worst record in football after 11 weeks, decided to fire head coach Jack Pardee and replace him with defensive coordinator Jeff Fisher. When Fisher took over the job on an interim basis, I'm sure a lot of people thought that he would only last until the end of the season, and he was just a new face to try and keep the ship from sinking any further than it had already. However, what followed was an unbelievably successful tenure that I'm not sure anyone saw coming, because Fisher became one of the longest tenured coaches in the history of the sport. He successfully guided the team through a relocation, and somehow got the Oilers to a .500 record in 1996, despite the fact that they were playing their games under the backdrop that they were leaving, and got them to a .500 record in 1997, despite going back and forth between Nashville and Memphis in an absolutely disastrous move. In 1999, he guided the newly named Tennessee Titans to a 13-3 record, and their first Super Bowl appearance in franchise history, where they played in Super Bowl 34 before losing to the St. Louis Rams. He followed that up in 2000 with another 13-3 record, where the Titans won the AFC Central for the first time since moving to Tennessee, for the first time since 1993, and for just the third time ever, and where they got the #1 seed for the first time ever. In 2002, he led the Titans to an AFC South title, as they finished 11-5, and he guided them all the way to the AFC Championship against the Oakland Raiders, getting a first-round bye in the process. As a side note, to learn more about their 2002 divisional win against the Pittsburgh Steelers that got them to that point, click the card in the upper right corner. And in 2003, he once again led the Titans to the playoffs with a 12-4 record, guiding them to the divisional round for the fourth time in 5 years. Fisher was running one heck of a team over in Tennessee. When you make it to the divisional round in 4 out of 5 years, you're doing something right. And considering the fact that the Titans were literally the only team in the NFL to accomplish this feat between 1999 and 2003 besides the Eagles, and had won 5 playoff games in that stretch, which was only behind the New England Patriots for the most in football in that time frame, they were definitely doing something right. Now the Titans were falling on hard times over the next 2 seasons, stumbling to a last place 5-11 finish in 2004 and a 4-12 finish in 2005, and things were once again looking bad in 2006, as the Titans started the season off with an abysmal 2-7 record, which not only gave them the worst record in football alongside the Oakland Raiders, but gave them the worst point differential in football at -97. Most coaches who don't have a ring can survive 3 years with double-digit losses. After that third straight season, everything becomes murky, and your odds of survival are not good. It was looking like Fisher's time in Tennessee might be coming to an end after that horrible start, and that the team would be searching for a new head coach in 2007, especially since Fisher's contract expired after 2006, with a one-year option that could be exercised by the team. But whereas the Oakland Raiders started 2-7 and wound up getting the number 1 pick in the draft that year, the Tennessee Titans started 2-7 and almost made the playoffs. In one of the greatest single-season turnarounds of all time that still amazes people to this day, the Titans went from the worst record in the conference and dead last in the AFC to the playoff picture. Tennessee won 6 straight games, some of which were improbable, like an overtime win against the Houston Texans, a ridiculous comeback victory against the New York Giants where they won 24-21 after trailing 21-0 with 10 minutes left in the game, and a win against the Jacksonville Jaguars where the Titans won despite having 98 yards of total offense, 5 first downs, having the ball for just over 15 minutes, and going 0 for 8 on third down. And had the Titans beaten the New England Patriots on the final day of the season, they would have been in the playoffs. I did a video an incredibly long time ago on that 2006 Titans team, so if you want to learn more about their turnaround, click the card in the upper right corner. Even though the Titans lost that final game, for Fisher's efforts in somehow salvaging what seemed like a lost season, he got a vote for AP Coach of the Year, and his option was picked up, with the two sides in negotiations to extend the deal even further, as in 2007, Fisher would be entering his 14th season as the head coach of the organization. But while one team was extending their longtime head coach, another team was in the middle of losing theirs. And that's where things get insanely wild. On January 6, 2007, the Dallas Cowboys played the Seattle Seahawks in the wildcard round. Today, this game is remembered by most people for one play, and one play only. You've all seen it. Facing 4th and 1 on the 2-yard line, with a chip shot 19-yard field goal ahead, the distance of an extra point back then, to give the Cowboys the lead with a minute left, Tony Romo botches the hold, and unbelievably, the Cowboys do not take the lead. Seattle takes over, and they win the game. This game would also live on in the history of the NFL for a very different reason. Because more than a week after the game, legendary head coach Bill Parcells announced his retirement, making this game the final one that Parcells ever coached in his NFL career. Bill Parcells is one of the greatest coaches and masterminds in the history of the NFL, having successfully revived and taking over not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 separate franchises, and having won 2 Super Bowls with the New York Giants while making it to a 3rd as a member of the New England Patriots. And after 19 seasons of the NFL, Parcells was ready to hang it up, and never put on the headset again. As Parcells said, "I am in good health and feel lucky to have been able to coach in the NFL for an extended period of time. I leave the game in the NFL with nothing but good feelings and gratitude to all the players, coaches, and other people that have assisted me in that regard." With the news of Parcells retiring and walking away from coaching forever, it was time for Jerry Jones and the Cowboys to pick a new head coach. And that's when Steve Underwood, the chief operating officer for the Tennessee Titans, told the Cowboys, incredibly bluntly, "Keep your hands off of Jeff Fisher. He's ours." Now, before I go any further, I have to emphasize a few things. Number 1, Fisher was under contract to coach the Titans in 2007, and was deep in negotiations to extend his contract beyond the 2007 season. There were no reports of negotiations stalling or of any holdups. Fisher had been negotiating contracts with the organization for a decade and a half at this point, and the respect was mutual on both sides, so this was all but a formality. It's not as though Fisher was a free agent head coach that could just choose wherever he wanted to go. Fisher was going to be with the Titans in 2007, and everyone knew that. Number 2, Fisher had no connection whatsoever to the Dallas Cowboys, and has no connection whatsoever to the city of Dallas. This is not a situation like when Jim Harbaugh left the NFL, even though he could have gotten a job just about anywhere to go to his alma mater at Michigan. Fisher was born in Culver City, California. He played his high school football at California. He played his college football at USC, which is in California. He was then drafted and played 4 seasons with the Chicago Bears. After that, he got into coaching, and was the defensive backs coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, the defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams, and the defensive backs coach for the San Francisco 49ers, before assuming his position with the Houston Oilers, who are now the Tennessee Titans. There was nothing about the Dallas job that, when it came to Fisher, was even the slightest bit attractive from a nostalgia standpoint or a hometown standpoint, because it was completely non-applicable. Yet for some reason, Underwood had to announce to the world that Fisher was not going to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and he did this in about the weirdest way possible. As Underwood said, Dallas has not requested permission to speak to Coach Fisher, and in the event they did, there are no circumstances under which permission would be granted. I'm sorry, Dallas hadn't even asked if they could speak to Fisher? So they were never interested in Fisher in the first place? And you had to put out a statement where you put Dallas on blast for having non-existent interest in him? How does that make any sense? This is like the USAA strategy for selling insurance. I know you're not thinking of buying USAA insurance, but even if you were interested, too bad. You can't get it because you're not a veteran. Regardless of what form it comes in, whether it comes in Rob Gronkowski being one of the worst actors alive, or whether it comes in the Titans shooting down completely made-up interest in their head coach, it is an absolutely baffling strategy. Now you might be saying that even though the Cowboys never directly spoke to Fisher, that there were rumors circulating. Maybe the Cowboys were going to reach out to Fisher, and maybe he was the #1 name on their list according to sources. But here's the thing. I dug high and low, and searched every corner of the internet, and I could not find a single report from 2007 of the Cowboys showing any interest in hiring Jeff Fisher. The only thing I could find was from earlier in the 2006 season, when Fisher's job status became on the rocks before they went on their giant winning streak, where some reports said that Jerry Jones had his eyes on Jeff Fisher if his contract were to run out, and if his team option were not picked up. And Fisher adamantly squashed and denied those rumors, saying, "I was only made aware of it through secondhand information, and it is not the first time there has been that type of speculation. I am honored to be a part of this organization, and always have been, and I expect and hope to remain a part of this organization." And remember, this statement was made when the Titans were 2-7, and was not said before the remarkable second half turnaround, when there were literally no questions and no reports about his job status. By this time, any speculation, however minimal or legitimate it was, had been completely killed off. Because in 2007, across the United States, I could only find one article mentioning Jeff Fisher and the Dallas Cowboys at all. And that was an article that was written as a suggestion in a hypothetical scenario for something that could have happened if Fisher became available and didn't have his option picked up. But because he did, it was a moot point. It would be like if I wrote an article saying that if the Ravens let Lamar Jackson walk and allow him to become a free agent, that the Seattle Seahawks could have interest. But this is entirely contingent on Jackson becoming a free agent. Then the Ravens re-sign him, and their COO puts out a statement saying that under no circumstances are we going to let the Seahawks sign him. Like, duh, your only source linking the two was a newspaper article merely used as an illustration and not as an actual feasible solution. You literally created a problem and created outrage over something that did not exist and was never going to happen. If a team doesn't even inquire about a person's job status, then they clearly do not care and clearly do not view that person as an option. So why the Titans felt the need to put out that statement considering all of that, I have absolutely no idea. As for what happened with Fisher after he stayed with the Titans and had his employer rejected from seeking another job that never even existed in the first place, it was a bit of a mixed bag. The good news for the Titans was that they made the playoffs in 2007 with a 10-6 record, won the AFC South and got the #1 seed in 2008 with a 13-3 record, and had another incredible bounce-back season in 2009 when they started 0-6 and somehow finished just outside the playoff picture with an 8-8 record, in a season that truly felt like deja vu of the 2006 campaign all over again. The bad news was that Fisher never won another playoff game, and after a poor season in 2010 where they went 6-10, never coached in Tennessee again. The Cowboys eventually hired Wade Phillips, who was also a bit of a mixed bag to say the least. But at least Jeff Fisher never found himself on the Cowboys, even though that was literally never a possibility to begin with. So what's the moral of the story here? Don't make up outrageous fake stories, because you're just going to look absolutely ridiculous at the end of the day. Don't spend time at a press conference squashing fake rumors that you kind of invented yourself, and that literally no one was even thinking about beforehand. Issue all the votes of confidence to your head coach that you want, but the moment you say that another team can't have him, even though that other team literally never even inquired as to whether or not he was available, or what his price point was, you make yourself look silly. It takes two to tango. But even though the Titans didn't have a dancing partner with the Jeff Fisher interest around the league, and in particular with the Cowboys, And even though the Titans had literally the most stable head coach in football at the time, it still didn't stop them from making the rumor mill and the coaching carousel a little more exciting. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.